Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by former world champion Chris Algieri. Chris, how you doing?
Very good. Very good.
And before we talk a bit about the welterweight division in depth, so a division in which you were, of course, incredibly successful, just want to get an idea of what you're doing now. Are you officially done as an active competitor now, or are we going to see you again in the ring?
Nothing's official. Yes, yay or nay. So there is still hope, but we'll see. I'm very busy these days with everything else that I've been doing, so it's been tough to get in the gym.
Tell us a bit about that because you're already doing kind of nutrition type stuff with a lot of fighters during your own active career anyway. Has that kind of amped up a lot now?
No, I don't do that at all anymore. A
Okay.
lot of people ask me about that. It's not. That's why I wrote the book, because it's just way too much time. I can't. I'm only one person. I did that while I was off in between my career because I was in legal trouble with not legal trouble, but I was in yeah, I guess legal trouble with my promotion at the time. I was coming off a knee injury from the Spence fight. I had surgery. I was off for 2.5 years. I started doing the nutrition for fighters then. Something I never really wanted to do. But I just did it because there was a need for me to stay in the sport, and that was how I could do it. And then once I started my own career once again and came back, it was just zero time for me to do that. And since then, it's really, honestly, it's not something I really care to do. I still have a lot of people ask me about it, but again, that's why I wrote the book. Go get the book.
I
Everything's in
will.
there.
I'll add it to the list. So what's taking up the majority of your time now? What I know obviously you work with fighters, but what specifically are you doing?
Well, I commentate. I'm working for DAZN, Top Rank, Pro Box TV. I have my own podcast, Inside Boxing Live with Dan Canobio on the John Boy Media Network. So all that together keeps me pretty busy. And I'm an adjunct professor down here in Nova Southeastern in South Florida. I teach a nutritional neuroscience class, couple classes per semester, just to keep my head in the game with academia and the books.
How did that come about? Was that through working with fighters or how were they aware of you and how did you go on board with the faculty?
No, that's through myself as a sports nutritionist, certified sports nutritionist and speaker. So I speak all over the country for nutrition related and sports performance type stuff. I worked again during the time when I was off of boxing. With those troubles I was dealing with, I worked for colleges as a nutritionist as well. So I got to work with a lot of different athletes, and that secured me a lot of positions where I was able to speak to people who are in this world and with different universities. And again, I had time, so decided to get back to academia. I always loved going to school, being in school, and I always kind of figured that I was going to end up there after. But now it seems like even commentating is just way too time intensive for me. So that's I think that's where my future is.
What do you enjoy the most about commentating on fights and what's the biggest challenge you face so far?
Well, I mean, it's the sport I love. So we're covering a topic that's near and dear to my heart and something that I've been involved in for the majority of my life. And I've been a fan well before I was ever a fighter. So now I get the best seat in the house and I get to talk about the fighters. I get to talk to the fighters. I get to interview guys. I get to see guys. I get to be in fight weeks. I mean, it's a lot of fun. If you're a fan of the sport, I don't think anyone would want to do what I do. But but it also takes a lot of homework and a lot of skill. And I don't think people realize how much work goes into every single show that a commentator does. And I was telling someone that the other day, and they're like, really, I had no idea. And I'm like, well, if you want to be good at something, I could go out there and be average, and I don't have to do all that homework, and I could just go out there and wing it. And some people would be able to tell, some wouldn't, but I like to be really good at the things that I do. So I put a lot of work in behind the scenes to make sure that the calls are on point. And I think that's really important because it gives respect and honor to the sport and to the fighters themselves.
What's the biggest challenge or what have you found difficult, if anything?
The travel. It's a lot of travel. I love the travel, which has helped me, but it's still a lot. I mean, my schedule has been breakneck in terms of how busy I am and how many shows I'm doing a month. But dealing with time zones and missing your family, getting things done when you are home. Getting in the gym, like I said, I love going to the gym. I will never not be in the gym. I don't care how many years I'm retired. I'll still be in a boxing gym. So stringing a couple of days in a row together at a boxing gym has been tough. But yeah, no, it's just part of it. And I'm young enough where I still enjoy the travel. I'm good at it. But yeah, I think that's the hardest part is just being on the road so much.
And just changing tack to the current welterweight division, around half an hour before we got on this call, a fight that I was looking forward to has been postponed for the third time, I believe, between Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Imantius Stanionis for the WBA title at welterweight. It seems there's not a lot of detail at the moment about Virgil, but apparently he's been hospitalised, according to Jake Donovan's report, which obviously we're all really concerned about him. But there have been a couple of occasions in the past where he's had problems with, I think it's called rhabdomyolysis or rhabdo for short. I'm not, an expert in that field or in medicine generally, but it seems to be something that keeps recurring. We're not sure if this particular time it has. How concerned should we be about Virgil Ortiz from your knowledge of this condition?
Well, first and foremost, I wish him the best. Of course, his health is more important than anything. But secondly, I'm very upset about that because this is an awesome fight. I really was looking forward to this fight. This is a heartbreaker. I literally just saw it just now on the couch. I was like, man, like it's just it's a snake bitten fight apparently. He's been dealing a lot with health issues. I had read somewhere that he had COVID several times and are like back to back. Obviously, he had the rhabdomyolysis, which is a pretty serious condition. And one of my nephews actually suffered from it as well. He's a high level soccer player, and he wasn't on top of his diet. He's a young man. He's playing hard and working hard, and that's kind of what happens. It's a lot of like breakdown of muscle tissue, and what happens is it floods your bloodstream and it can damage your kidneys. So it's a very dangerous thing to encounter, but it makes sense for boxers. One, we train really, really hard in a number of different ways, from endurance to strength and conditioning to sparring to tissue damage. There's so many things involved in preparing for a world-class fight that would tend to lead you to see a rhabdomyolysis situation. I'm surprised we don't see it more often, honestly. But also, we're cutting weight, and when you dehydrate yourself, that can exacerbate the side effects of the condition itself. So I was always concerned about Virgil because I know he's very big for the weight class. He cuts a lot of weight. I'm friends with his trainer Robert Garcia, and so I was always concerned about him after dealing with that, how it was going to be making the weight, because 47 is a big cut for him. So there's no news yet. Your guess is as good as mine. But usually if it's within a couple of days of the weigh-in and the guy ends up in the hospital, probably has something to do with with cutting the weight. But we'll see. I mean, hopefully it's nothing too serious. And he recovers and we get to see him again because he is such a fantastic fighter and talent. But his days at 147 may be over.
And another young welterweight that hopefully we will see in action, fingers crossed, in the near future is Jaron Boots Ennis against Roman Villa, of course. How high are you on Ennis's talent? How far do we feel he can go?
Honestly, I think he's the future of the welterweight division. I've actually, when head to head, I've been kind of backing Virgil Ortiz. Virgil's my guy. I love the way he fights. I think that he's a very difficult style to deal with. But I knew that he wasn't going to be welterweight that long. So whether that fight ever happened or not, even if Virgil Ortiz were to win against Ennis and he moves up, I think Ennis stays at 47 and will be there for a long time. And I think he is the true future of the division. I mean, he is super, super talented. We haven't seen him in those high level fights yet. But he's going to get there, and what he's been able to do with the guys that he does fight when he does step up, I mean, it's nothing short of miraculous. The kid is so talented. I love the way he fights. His style is great. He's slick. He's got that East Coast kind of. He's got that Philly shell style that he can fight out of. He's a great counterpuncher. A lot of East Coast fighters on the States have that kind of style. So I came up in the gyms in Brooklyn and Brooklyn, Jersey, and all those guys in the DC area. And he does it with power. He's got game-changing power with both hands. Excellent counterpuncher, has a brilliant jab, and he gets hit and like is willing to take the shots. I'm thinking of the fight when he fought the former world two-time champ, a Russian fighter. He fought at 140. Drawing a blank right now. Very, very tough guy. He ended up knocking him out, but he was in that fight and was willing to trade, and I think that showed a lot about his chin and his heart and his ability to go for the knockouts. Because I mean, he goes for him, he gets him. It's a very impressive guy to watch fight.
With Errol Spence and Terence Crawford really close now, 3 weeks away, thoughts are inevitably turning to the future of the welterweight division, because whoever wins that fight or even whoever loses may both move up in weight or seek other challenges. And they're also, I don't want to say the wrong side of 30, but they're certainly not under 30. Who should we be looking at, apart from the two names we've just mentioned in Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis? Who else has caught your eye on the way up?
Stanionis is another guy I put right up there with them, and there was no gimme. It wasn't, I said I'm a big Virgil Ortiz fan, but there was no gimme that he was going to get past Stanionis this weekend if they were to fight. And I think he's good enough to be mentioned in those three guys. I think those are the three young guys that are really at the tip top. And we got Rashidi Ellis, who's coming off of an upset loss from Villa, who is fighting Jaron this weekend. And I think after this weekend, we're going to have a lot of answers about that too, because if he gives Jaron a real problem and he got a true test. Okay, Rashidi's right there too. Then, if Jaron goes out there and blows him out, like I think he might, then then there's going to be less of an opportunity for Rashidi to jump right back in the mix. But still super talented, very fast hands, super talented young guy. I think he's right in there, right in the mix too. And then you got guys like Keith Thurman who are just kind of on the outskirts. He's still around, still a viable opponent for any one of those guys. We get the classic former champion veteran fighting the new up and coming guy who's going to be the future, and you get to see what they can do with that level of experience. So yeah, those are my top four young guys, and then I got to say that we got Thurman on the outskirts who could jump in with anybody.
Now, one name you didn't mention there, of course, is Conor Benn. We're not going to talk about the recent controversy because I'm sure you're sick of talking about that. But just purely on talent, having been in there with him as well, where does he compare to these guys like Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz?
I mean, it's hard to say. We haven't really seen him against, top welterweights or anyone really near his weight class. So he's obviously an explosive guy. He's a strong young guy. But I also don't know if he's even gonna be a welterweight anymore. We're talking about fights with Eubank at 160, and so it's really hard to say. Plus, he's been so inactive. I mean, it's been a year and a half now since he's been in the ring, and we don't know when the next time he could be in the ring would be.
Let's talk about the fight at the very top of the division then. For all the major belts as well, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, a fight many years in the making, finally going to happen, barring any, unforeseen emergencies closer to the date. What type of fight do you expect? Before I ask you for a prediction, what type of fight how do you think it will play out?
I'm hoping for an absolute, you know, epic back and forth situation like a Hearns Leonard, where it's tit for tat, where one guy's get one round, next guy gets the next round, the next guy adjusts. And I'm thinking of high level chess back and forth of these guys being able to just try and just edge each other out each round and try and find a way. And I think there's going to be ebbs and flows in terms of who's able to impose their will and style. It may not be the most exciting fight right off the bat. I'm not thinking we're going to see a Hagler Hearn situation, but I do think we're going to see some high level boxing, a lot of IQ. I think for true boxing fans and people who are really into the sport are really going to enjoy what these guys have in there. Because I mean, both of them are so crafty. Spence does not get the credit he deserves for how good of a boxer he actually is. I keep hearing people saying like, he's too basic. He's fundamentally perfect. Everything he does is right. His hand position, his body punching, his combinations, the ways where he puts his feet when it's time to throw combinations. Anyone who throws that many punches at such a high level, he's one of the busiest champions in the world. That shows you that he's got incredible fundamentals because his balance is there, his defense is there, his awareness is there. His hand position, he brings his hands back home really, really well. So they're all fundamental things that you learn day one in the gym. He just does them all really, really well, and people somehow see that as being a negative. Maybe because of Terence Crawford, because of how fluid he is, how he adjusts, how he switches sides seamlessly, how he sets things up from unorthodox positions. Absolutely. But that's why the style matchup is so great. I said on my podcast about, we were thinking about, everyone's comparing this to Pacquiao Mayweather. But at the end of the day, the Pacquiao Mayweather fight stylistically never matched up well. It was never a good looking fight matchup. It was really not good for Pacquiao. That style that Mayweather employs was able to shut Pacquiao down on numerous occasions. He wasn't good with long boxers, guys who slowed the pace, guys who counterpunch, especially guys who were taller, longer like that, who were able to be just as quick as him. This fight's different. Both these guys can use their style to make it work against the other guy's style. So it makes for a really intriguing matchup. And like you said, I just hope we get there, because we got a fight like Stanionis and Ortiz falling out less than 48 hours, and it makes me nervous about the future.
Of course, I have to ask you. It's going to be the question on everyone's lips the closer we get to the fight. But who do you expect to come out on top?
I flip-flop back and forth and have been for months. I was always very bullish on Spence. I just thought he was too big, too strong. His pedigree against the guys that he's fought is much better at welterweight. Terence is on his 3rd weight class coming up. But, I mean, Terence has grown into a real welterweight now. He is, he has 100% KO percentage at welterweight, which is super impressive. They fought a lot of the same guys, but he fought them years later than Spence did. I think Spence actually had the better versions of the guys that he beat. So there's a lot of nuanced to this. The nuances to this fight, you got to really look past the numbers. Crawford's style. Again, it's like you're fighting 2 different guys because he can switch and he fights so well from either side, and he has different attributes from either side. It literally is fighting 2 guys. But again, Spence with the fundamentals and his physicality, he's the biggest welterweight I've ever seen. And I call him the Terminator because it's almost like he has an exoskeleton. If you watch him, I mean, everybody who's hit him, it's like, yeah, some people got him to take an awkward step or whatever, but like he's never been hurt. Everyone talks about, he was hurt in this fight. No, he wasn't. Never been hurt. The guy walks through the biggest punches. Kell Brook was a very good puncher at welterweight, and Spence walked through those shots, walked him down, beat him up, broke his eye, got him out of there. That was one of his more impressive wins for Spence, honestly, because Kell at that time I thought was a phenomenal fighter. This is one of those fights, man. And then some versions of me see Crawford, and I'm like, man, he's just too good from each side. If you start figuring him out one way, he goes the other way. He has game-changing power with both hands. I could see Crawford knocking Spence out. I could also see Spence walking Crawford down, beating him up, and getting him out of there too. So it's just, it's one of those fights. I'm going to be there in fight week in Vegas, and I'm going to make my decision probably on the morning of, after I see them fight week. That's really big for me as a fighter. I love being around fight week because I get to see the guys. I get to see their energy, their aura, their personality at the press conference. I get to see their bodies, their aura again at the weigh-in. I get to see how they are walking around. I think a lot of that matters, and I think if you watch the betting odds, it matters to them too. So fight week things can change. So I'm holding off my prediction until then.
You're such a journalist now, Chris. The fight week.
I woke up a pundit one day. It's weird.
It's great. So just finally, then, you don't want to pick a winner just yet about the fight you haven't decided, but who would you have preferred to have gone up against out of the 2, style-wise?
There was Crawford and I just passed each other at 40. I had the WBO title. I was stripped when I was going to fight Pacquiao. Yeah. And then he fought for it. And then I ended up getting the Khan fight after the Pacquiao fight. I wanted to go back down to 40. I never really wanted to fight a welterweight. I was always a 40-pounder. I knew that. I was never physically big enough for those welterweight guys. Those guys walk around so heavy. I never did. I still don't. So I never really wanted to fight at 47, but that's where all the big names were. That's where the big money was. I always wanted to fight Amir Khan. I got the fight with Spence up there, and Spence was just too big for me. He'd said that on the lead up, and we literally doing interviews, and he's like, Chris is not. He's not big enough for this weight. I had no idea he was that big. And he was absolutely right. I didn't really realize it until I was in the ring with him. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not a welterweight. I don't know. I think sharing a ring with Crawford would be cool because of his style, and there's nobody like it. I've already fought Spence, and then I've been in the ring with Pacquiao, another guy who's got a really difficult style to hammer down and prepare for. Crawford, I don't know how you prepare for him. You gotta spar. You gotta have a righty for round 1 and a lefty for round 2. So I think that would be an interesting kind of enigma to try and figure out and spend the ring with.
Brilliant, Chris. Really appreciate it. I could listen to you all day. Very insightful as always. But maybe we'll catch up again after the fight, and we'll see what your last minute prediction was and if it came true.
Sounds good. Pleasure.
Good stuff. Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Yep.